Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and do excuse this thing on my chin. I sort of gouged myself shaving this morning. And thank you for stopping by, I do appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance to look at the Mindspeak session with January Makamba, please do. We've sliced it a little bit, we put in a Kiswahili teaser as well. He really was a tremendous guest, and I'm quite taken with him. I'll also put up a photograph I took of Dar es Salaam at night from the 8th floor on the Hyatt Kilimanjaro, which I liked. The big macro event today is clearly the Federal Reserve. They're expected to lay the groundwork for the first interest rate hike in nearly a decade. It's a momentous moment, actually. Christine Lagarde, of whom I'm very fond, warned the world to brace for volatility if Fed surprises. We are perhaps approaching the point where, for the first time since 2006, the United States will raise short-term interest rates later this year, Lagarde said in Mumbai on Tuesday. Even if this process is well managed, the likely volatility in financial markets could give rise to potential stability risks. While markets have priced in possible Fed tightening to an extent, they have not priced in Fed tightening. The Fed themselves have outlined they're pricing in a much more benign curve. The International Monetary Fund sees some volatility based on the timing, pace, and volume of the move. Lagarde said she called for more policy cooperation among the central banks as they get closer to an inflection point. We went through a period of total lack of volatility for very long, she said. Some people got used to it, but the normal way of operating is more volatility than what we have, than no volatility. I am, as you know, a very big fan, and I think she's right on the money, and I expect a massive move in the markets. I expect Janet Yellen actually to speak, remove the word patient, speak of policy normalization, to hike rates in June. We saw that with QE. She moved pretty much as she said she would. Returning to Madame Lagarde, I wrote of her because of her wonderful appearance at Mindspeak. If Mindspeak was an ice cream sundae, then Christine Lagarde's appearance at Mindspeak was like the maraschino cherry that you find on top of the ice cream sundae. She said many things, and when Hannah and I gave her flowers, Hannah said to her, "I want to be like you." And Lagarde replied, "Work hard and you can be anything you want to be." I'll put up that photograph when she said that. Rabindranath Tagore says, "Death is not extinguishing the light, it is only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come." I must say, as I approach 50, I've been feeling that life has passed by so fast, and that I never appreciated my body at age 20 and various other things. Everything comes to us that belongs to us if we create the capacity to receive it. Tagore again. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seen here casting his ballot for the parliamentary election at a polling station in Jerusalem. That was yesterday. Subsequently, he's tweeted, "This is a great victory for our nation. I'm proud of people of Israel who in the moment of truth knew what was important," he said. "Against all odds, a great victory for the Likud, a major victory for the people of Israel." "He's a magician, he's a magician," the crowd chanted. Bibi Netanyahu, as photographed by Platon, I'll put up as well, so he's pulled off a famous victory here, clearly. Kitchen scene in Donetsk in Ukraine, August 2014, caught my attention, as did this photograph of the South African President Jacob Zuma with Russia's Vladimir Putin in Moscow on August the 28th, 2014. According to this article in East African, Russia is working with South Africa and Uganda on a number of projects, a clear indication of its return to Africa. RT Global Resources won the bid to build a Ugandan oil refinery subsidiary of Rostec, whose CEO Sergei Chemesov is on a US and EU sanctions list after Russia's moves in Ukraine. Moscow's interest in Africa is all about soft power, says Keir Giles, director of the UK's Conflict Studies Research Centre. Interesting. So basically, in global markets, we're all waiting on the Fed. Dollar bulls like myself are banking on the Fed losing its patience. A Fed statement is due at 1600 GMT, followed half an hour later by a press conference with Chairwoman Janet Yellen. A string of strong payroll reports has left the strong impression that the Fed will drop its reference to being patient on policy. Our baseline view is that the Fed can start its normalization process around mid-year, and that's my baseline view as well. Euro 106.10 got to 106.51 yesterday, and support is seen at 105.51. I'm bearish about the euro. We traded as low as 104.57. We've sort of bounced off that level. A lot of strength in euro sterling in particular, but I for one think we'll see a breakdown again. Dollar index below 100 for now, but I think we're going to burst through that on the Fed decision later today. Japanese yen 121.26. In this sort of range, 121, 122, but I think we'll break higher towards 125. Swissy 0.10041. I was thinking back to some days past. Swissy was as high as 125, so my target for the Swissy point of fact is around there. Pound is at 147.45. Aussie just below 76. India rupee 62.705. It's interesting how the commodity currencies, Canadian, Aussie, they're all very weak right now. South Korean won 1126.47, Real 324.54, very bearish the Real, 762.86, and the South African rand when I checked last 1236.22. Dollar index, I'll put up a chart, and we're going to break through 100 and there's going to be no coming back, I'm afraid. And I wrote about this, a small window for sharks. As the dollar rises, I remain a dollar bull. And I thought in September last year that it had just gotten going, and I said there will be blood in the water. There is a small window if we want to be the sharks. Today might well be one of those days when there's blood in the water. And I said on the 12th of January, a rate hike, even as small as 0.25%, will be the catalyst for a renewed surge in the dollar and an absolute tailspin in the markets. And then another piece I wrote on the 9th of February. I'm glad I wrote all these pieces to make my point. King dollar, I called it. Euro dollar, it's going below parity. My call for parity in January has now been followed by everybody. I'm now at 0.93. I'll put up a 3-month chart of that. That's sort of having, we've been quite stubborn the last 48 hours, 2 sessions or so of the euro. City Group sees slower commodities demand growth as China recedes. Global commodity markets will see slower, less synchronized demand growth from across the world as China's dominance fades, according to Citigroup. This is an important development for Africa. Global demand expansion, which centered on the rise of China in the 2000s, will slow in the next decade and be driven increasingly by India, which will be much more patchy in its demand structure than somewhere like China, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Latin America, and Africa. Emerging 5 won't be enough to offset the impact of slower growth from China, Citigroup said. Commodities tumbled to a 12-year low on Monday. That 12-year low, with crude oil now down 18% in 2015. Bloomberg Commodity Index, which tracks 22 raw materials, was at 97.4738 on Tuesday, down 6.6% this year. Among the hardest hit raw materials from China's slowdown are bulk commodities such as coal, iron ore, and steel. Then I saw, and I haven't looked at the sugar markets for a long time, the world has never been so awash in sugar. All of that sugar signals global prices down, already down 51% in 3 years, are poised to fall further. Gold, as far as I'm concerned, it's going down, and down a lot. I'll put up a chart from Kitco. My target's below 1,000. We're now below 1150, and I expect the acceleration lower to gather speed. Crude oil, when I checked last, had rebounded as high as $44.80, but I think, put up a one-year chart. I think we're breaking down below 40 now. Deutsche Bank plans to make the Dubai International Financial Center the hub for its African operations, according to its local CEO. Ashok Aram, who heads Deutsche Bank in the Middle East, made the announcement Tuesday at the Bloomberg Future Cities Forum in Dubai. The board has approved the move. I'll put up a photograph of Dubai in the afternoon taken when I was there last year. Reference you to my article on the 24th of February when I described Dubai as the real transit state, a connection point in an interconnected century. I say, and quoting that, looking at what the Sheikh achieved from 1991, if you look at photographs, there was nothing to what has been achieved today. And I went back to Victor Hugo. There is nothing like a dream to create the future. Sub-Saharan Africa, PwC, have put out an interesting report into Africa, the continent cities of opportunity. And they're saying the megatrends, as we call them in PwC, are colliding across Africa. A growing middle class, strong demographic growth with improving age mix, technological innovation that we've already seen in mobile payments, for example, growing choice of investment partners from the global south, fast-paced urbanization. It's really extraordinary. And it was when I went to Poland and I said to them, what's been the population of Warsaw? And they've been static since the Second World War. I thought to myself, oh my goodness, the challenge that Africa faces is this extraordinary expansion in our cities. It's just unbelievable. These trends, twinned with the generally accepted economic data that cities are the world's engines of growth, that was that other report I liked about global fluency and metropolitan growth hubs, makes our Into Africa, the continent's cities of opportunity report not only necessary but extremely timely. 20 African cities, Abidjan, never been there, Accra, going there later this year, Addis Ababa, fantastic place, very safe, Italian, lovely. It's Algiers, I'd love to go there. Do you remember that film that I like? Ponta Corvo, Antananarivo, I've never been there. Cairo, yes I have, when I was about 16, extraordinary experience. Casablanca, love to go there. Dakar, they say, is an extraordinary city. Dar es Salaam this weekend. Douala, haven't been there. Johannesburg several times. Kampala, Kigali, Kinshasa, been there. Kinshasa, if you ever land at that airport, you don't want to be landing without someone meeting you there. It's sort of Kafkaesque. Lagos, Luanda, Lusaka, Maputo, and Arabian Tunis. Have a look at their presentation, that link's on there as well, that's very good. Interesting tweets came out of Chatham House. Nigeria is the giant in African oil. What happens there has a spillover effect across the region, very true. Value of oil sold by Congo Brazzaville's national oil company is more than 80% of government revenue. Well, that makes Congo Brazzaville a shorting prospect, if you could. New oil companies in Africa have the same desire as old ones, political stability. Very true. This was an interesting point, and last night I was at dinner, and the guy there was the Tello chap. He made some very interesting points, actually. Said that the price per barrel was irrelevant, that they're committed to spending another $422 million until October. After October, they don't know. Seemed to imply that the main issue is going to be the pipeline, and that's what Teller's waiting on. Going back to Kenya, this Rahul Deer, who I spoke with once, it used to run Cairn Energy in India, now runs Delonex. Exploration in Eastern Africa can cost up to $60 million, he says, compared to about $5 million in remote parts of India. That's interesting. South Africa all share up 5.78% year to date. Current account deficit narrowed to 5.1% of GDP. That's all to do with oil. Dollar ran 12.3622 when I last checked, but obviously going to be weaker if the dollar plays out stronger. Egyptian pound 762.86. Egyptian stock market EGX 30 up 7.15%. Year to date being strong. Nigeria all shares second day down 1.26% yesterday, now down 13.57% year to date. And as I wrote on the 10th of November when I said turning to the markets in Africa, the Nigerian Naira and the all share have been wagadoogooed by the collapse in the price of oil. I think we're getting another collapse, and I think it's going to get even more intolerable. And I think the currency is headed way beyond 220, which was my target from January. And I called Emephile's finger in the dike strategy going to be overwhelmed by a tsunami. Foreigners train Nigerian troops as final onslaught hits Boko Haram. South Africans, Russians, Koreans and northeast Nigeria. Not there to fight Boko Haram, Abacha says. Final onslaught against Islamists underway. 42%, recipe for a disaster in Africa because it's too closely contested. And there's this sort of scarcity thing about winner takes all. Switzerland to return $380 million to Nigeria in a Abacha case. That's a good move, isn't it? He put up a photograph of him. He was notorious, wasn't he? He looks it, the photograph. Ghana Stock Exchange down 2.95% year to date. It's going to improve. This is all about Lagarde coming to the rescue. Rwanda grew by 7% in 2014 from 4.6% in the previous year. That's good. If you haven't seen Paul Kagame in conversation with the Kenya Chamber, please have a look at that. That was at the Kapinski, which is 100 meters down the road. Co-op Bank reported full year profit after tax declined 12.002%. The devil is in the detail. Total assets up 23.433%. They're going for growth. Loans and advances to customers up 31.19%. Full year profit before tax and exceptional items was up 14.092%. But then an exceptional item to do with redundancies of 1.342 billion shillings meant that profit before tax was up just 0.4025%. Profit after tax was down 12.002%. Earnings per share down 24.42%. But basically they're projecting 30% growth in profitability in 2015 resulting from the restructuring, and that's the restructuring crimped earnings. Strong franchise, and I think it'll be bought on dips. Nairobi outscores all African cities in FDI, says PwC, and that's clear. Portfolio flows have been robust. I think they got a bit of an acceleration because of the woes in Nigeria, January, February, then the trend reversed, and I think now again the trend's reasserting itself. Kenya shilling 92.245, 3-year lows, but it's down just 3% against the dollar over the last 6 months. It really is Teflon. Nairobi all share up 5.64% year to date, 3.109% below record high from the 25th of February. NSC 20 up 4.01% year to date, but it's corrected 186 points since the 2nd of March. Could not arrest a losing streak yesterday. Tea prices hit a 2-year high at auction as drought bites. In last week's auction, a kilogram of tea traded at $2.85 from $2.64 at the weekly auction, representing an 8% week-to-week jump. That's all because it's a drought. I had a friend who was in the Mara, said all the animals are expiring except the lions. They're eating all the dead animals, but saying it was a very sorry sight. I'm not going to go visit at this point in time of year. I'm going to wait for the rains. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it.